couple more minutes?
Yeah. Or you use.
Yeah. Let me see if I can get my muscle memory to work on this one. Well, good morning. Good morning. Today I get to be the piano player. I get to show off my ability. I'm not a trained piano player. I'm not a real piano player. But there's one very special skill that I have on the piano. I can make every song sound the same. And that's my thing. I can play about 100 songs, but if I'm not singing, you would not be able to tell when one ended and the next one began. So, but that's good, because it means that it gives us some flexibility this morning. All right. The topic of today's sermon, I think it's a good summertime topic. The topic is going to be fairy tales. So I was trying to think of a good fairy tale story to get us started, and this was the one that came to mind. So a knight came marching into the throne room and knelt before the king and said, "Your Majesty, I've got excellent news. We have pillaged and burned the villages of all of your enemies to the west." The king said, "Well done. Wait a minute. Our enemies are to the east. We don't have any enemies to the west." And the knight said, "Well, you do now." All right, good. Welcome to this place which we make holy by our presence. These doors are open to all. Bring your brokenness and your personal glow, your fatigue, your early morning aches, and your energy, your fears and anxieties, loves and hopes. For here you need not hide, nor pretend, nor be anything other than who you are and who you are called to be. Come into this place where the ordinary is sanctified, where the human is celebrated, where compassion is strength. Welcome to this place. Together, we make it a holy place. Please join me for the words of the chalice lighting. Do we have a chalice lighting volunteer? Come on, man. Let's see. Ooh, my friend here. All right. And the words of the chalice lighting are printed in your leaflet. So listen, while we say this, here's what you're going to do. Oh man, be very careful. You're going to take this and you're going to light this. May the light we now kindle inspire us to use our powers to heal and not to harm, to help and not to hinder, to bless and not to curse, to serve you, Spirit of freedom. Man, look at this guy. Good job, man. Before we do the joys and concerns, we're going to do our first song today. I thought we could try a sing-along. I hope we can do a sing-along. If I do Fire and Rain, can we sing it? I've seen fire, I've seen rain. Like sing part of it? Let's do our best. We'll do a short Fire and Rain. Just yesterday morning, just yesterday morning, they let me know you were gone. Suzanne, the plans they made put an end to you. I walked out this morning and I wrote down this song. Just can't remember who to send it to. I've seen fire and I've seen rain, seen sunny days that I thought would never end. Seen lonely times when I could not find a friend, but I always thought that I'd see you again. Been walking my mind to an easy time, my back turned toward the sun. Lord knows when the cold wind blows, it'll turn your head around. Well, there's hours of time on the telephone line to talk about things to come. Sweet dreams and flying machines and pieces on the ground. Oh, I've seen fire and I've seen rain, seen sunny days that I thought would never end. Seen lonely times when I could not find a friend, but I always thought that I'd see you again. I've seen fire and I've seen rain, seen sunny days that I thought would never end. Seen lonely times when I could not find a friend, but I always thought that I'd see you again. All right. Oh, thank you. This week, I took the kids to see James Taylor play at Darien Lake. And one question, I'll tell you, as a dad, as a parent, you get all kinds of questions, right? You're constantly answering questions. But one question I never thought I would have to answer is, who is James Taylor? But it was a question I had to answer a lot in this last week, and now they kind of know. All right. Just a minute, yeah? He was better known as Carly Simon's husband. Yes, that's right, that's right. And we saw him on this tour, and he introduced his band, and one of his backing vocalists was his son. But he didn't tell us if it was Carly Simon's son. So there was no reference at all to Carly Simon. Okay. The center of the service, and I think probably the most important part of it, is the sharing of joys and concerns. You know, a church, which I think to most of us that word means a Christian church. And when you come to a Christian church, they're all different, but something they tend to have in common is this. The center of attention, the thing up here, is the altar, and it is upon the altar that the sacrifice is made and shared. And in Christian churches, that sacrament is the body and blood of the Christ, in however that is interpreted, however that is meant. And it's the altar where the real magic happens. And we are here today at a Unitarian Universalist church, and that means that we are not going to do the Christian sacraments. And what I'm standing at now is not an altar. It is not a place where we make sacrifice. And really, I think in this church, the most important place is here, in this font. It used to be a baptismal font, and now it's been repurposed. But in this font, because this is where we, not just whoever's leading the service, but this is when we, the people who make this place sacred, we get to share something. We get to bring an offering. And we get to share it. And what we share in the middle of the service is a special joy, a special concern. Maybe it's something that we are living through. Maybe it's something that a friend or relative is going through. But it's something that's on our mind this week. So I encourage you to think about if there is something that you would like to share, some special joy or concern. And if you choose to do so, you can come up, you can introduce yourself, and you can say what it is. If you're not ready to talk about it, you can just come up in silence and we'll understand. And you're welcome to share something here and then light a candle from this basket and stand it up in this font. So we're going to take a moment of silence to think about if there's something we'd like to share, and then I invite you to come and do that.
Good morning. Yeah, it's almost July. I love July, it's my birth month. And it looks like we're having a picnic on that day too, July 28th. But that's not what I came up here for. Was going to not share about this. I was thinking on the way, but I thought, well, it made my heart swell so much and with gratitude that I thought I would share it. I was watching Law and Order the other day, and Olivia, who is Olivia? Olivia's a detective on a show called Law and Order, and she had her adopted son dedicated. There's a dedication at a Unitarian church, And I was just so impressed, and that she chose a Unitarian church. And it reminded me of 25 years ago when I had my daughter dedicated at the Unitarian church on Elmwood in Buffalo. And just, I've had people ask me about Unitarianism, and, that some of the first things they say, oh, that's where you go if you don't believe in God. I'm like, no. And I said, it's more like church light, It's where you can go and you're accepted. Your choices are accepted and you feel like you're at home. And people can kind of understand that better. So I just wanted to share that joy. Thank you.
I'm going to light a couple of candles. First one is a concern. My coworker, his name is Tyler. He's special needs and everything, but he's having a rough time because his dad was in a motorcycle accident this week. He's at ECMC. I believe he's still in ICU. I mean, it's kind of like wasn't looking good for him, and then his vitals were starting to come back, and now he's kind of like falling back down again. So I just want to maybe lift him up in your hearts and prayers. I don't know his dad's name. I can't remember, but his name is Tyler. But on the positive side, good note, I've had contractors redoing my kitchen. Some of you are friends of mine, seen it on Facebook. And those that haven't, during coffee hour, I'll show pictures of my kitchen on the phone. I brought it back to like a 1940s style, pretty much. And I have a 1939 sink, but a little bit of modern. Underneath it, I have an 18-inch dishwasher, a cabinet, and a brand new refrigerator, gas stove, and all that. But I'm pretty happy with it. Contractors finished it Thursday, so I'm good to go now. Now it's a matter of putting my stuff back into place.
I'm William, and
One thing you're happy about.
so it's the end of the school year,
Yeah.
and I like that.
Yeah, man. What grade did you finish?
Second grade, and we basically after grade ends, we just take some time off before we go to the next grade. Take a long time, like 5 months. I don't know. It take a long time before we go to third grade. That's how it worked for when I was kindergarten to first grade. It took a long time. But when I was first grade to second grade, it straight up came the one day. It just came one day after, really fast.
Good. Yeah. So we're gonna have a summer vacation.
My joy is not as good as summer vacation, but I got to go to Comic-Con for the first time yesterday. I was so excited. I drugged my husband. He wasn't as excited as I thought he'd be, but we got to stand in a TARDIS and see the Daleks, and they were roaming around, which scared me a little. Marge has it, right there, Marge.
Thanks. I'd like to share something I do a lot, real early in the morning. And I live on the 8th floor with eastern view. And what that allows me to do, because of my intense interest in color, light, and all that subject, and what happens at about 20 to 5 in the morning this time of the year, about 4:40, the first ray of light from the sun shows up. The sun is still well below the horizon, so it's basically still dark out. But the first rays of light are the red rays, which are the lowest frequency of light traveling visible to the eye, and it travels at this kind of flat rate. So it's able to penetrate distance and other things, but that's one reason maybe red is so passionate, because it activates so many things. It's powerful penetration wave, flat. And on a piano, it's like hitting the lowest notes on a piano. In sound, that would be the sound equivalent of red would be the lowest notes. So anyway, what happens this time of the year, what happens every morning, but if there's any kind of clarity at the horizon point, right at the horizon itself, the red rays will appear, because it's traveling from the sun to that horizon point, but only its red rays are able to get that far. And so I wake up, I kind of waked up expecting this, but I go to my window and it's just a hint of light outside. The whole sky horizon point is beautiful scarlet red. Against the rest of the blackness, it's awesome. And I live on the 8th floor, so I can see what's going on without buildings being in the way and stuff. So, but what's incredible is that to see the magnificence of light itself manifest itself in our life. This scarlet, it takes several degrees of the horizon up, and all you need is just clarity at the horizon. If there's clouds above that, even the clouds will reflect that redness. So it's an amazing thing to see. It's amazing to see that whole phenomenon. It's just enlightening and powerful and creative to observe, though. It's like I say, it's not just sort of red, it's deep scarlet color. It's penetrating the darkness, and then it gradually fades to orange and yellow, and then by then the sun's ready to fully rise at the same horizon point. But I do this because I'm sort of half awake anyway, and I know this will become later in the morning as we advance into the summer and then the fall. By December, it'll be doing the same thing, but 47 degrees to the south. So it's just an amazing creative experience, and you see real physics and chemistry and light and power in your life directly, rather than just thinking about it.
Is there anyone else who'd like to share today? I'm going to light one more candle for those joys and concerns that we are holding inside and not yet ready to share. this morning, I'm going to be talking about William Shakespeare's play, The Winter's Tale, because it is currently running at Delaware Park in Buffalo, and my son Jackson is in it, doing an internship, and unfortunately, they did not cast him as King Leontes, the star of the show, but I asked him if this morning he'd be willing to share a monologue from the play. And this is a jealous king who has just been told that perhaps his jealousy is all in his head and maybe it's all nothing. So come on up. Okay.
Is whispering nothing? Is leaning cheek to cheek? Is meeting noses? Kissing with inside lip? Stopping the career of laughter with a sigh? A note infallible of breaking honesty, horsing foot on foot, skulking in corners, wishing clip clocks more swift, hours, minutes, noon, midnight. Is this nothing? Blind, and all eyes blind with the pins and web of but theirs only that would be seen as wicked. Is this nothing? Why then the world and all its in it is nothing. The common sky is nothing. Bohemia nothing. My life is nothing. And nothing have all these nothings if this be nothing. Thank you.
I learned a lot from fairy tales. For example, I learned that one should propose marriage before the first kiss, which made dating difficult, but eventually worked, and 19 years on, we're still happily ever after. I learned chivalry, which also turned out to be useless in high school. It turns out teenage girls are a lot more interested in the big bad wolf than they are in Prince Charming. I also learned it's nice to have romances with princesses, but when the time comes to settle down, marry the witch. Fairy tale witches are always more interesting and creative. Actually, in Disney movies, the witch is often the protagonist with the master plan, antagonized by the royalty. What I didn't learn from fairy tales until it was too late is that wishes come true only if you're willing to risk everything. Being romantic only works if you're also pragmatic. And of course, the classic lesson, true love's first kiss can be awkward and a little bit squeaky. True love's second kiss is generally better. What we call the fairy tale today was long known as the old wives' tale. Wife, in this case, being a word for a woman, regardless of marital status. Grandmothers and babysitters would tell bedtime stories to children, often about the magical, mysterious, and perilous transition to adulthood. Many old wives' tales have female protagonists and carry messages for girls about how to navigate that brief but crucial window between being a kid and having a kid. Remember, these stories often end with a wedding, which entailed immediate pregnancy. The stories also had messages for boys about how young men should treat young ladies. For some girls, the transition to adulthood would be a happy surprise, sort of like an orphan who finds out that she is a long-lost princess. As the body and face take their adult shapes, some scrawny, scrappy girls will suddenly blossom into beautiful young women. Ironic, since in real life, being long-lost royalty meant that one was probably inbred, and likely to grow up kind of hideous. For some, blossoming into adulthood would mean the sudden onset of envy from the prior generation, the wicked stepmother type. And puberty would also mean the onset of some unwanted attention, physical developments that stood out like a bright red cape and attracted dangerous wolves. So old wives' tales would give instructions about things like wandering in the woods alone, putting up with abusive relatives, considering whether such and such beastly or slimy suitor might be transformed into a prince by a kiss, and making snap decisions about whether or not to shove a witch into an oven. The old wives' tale was an oral tradition. Let's remember, our written fairy tales come from story collectors in the 1800s, interviewing grandmothers and writing their stories down. Then illustrators and animators would later add images of slim waifs, inspiring adolescent girls to hate their own body shapes. But for centuries, these stories had been malleable templates, outlines where you could sort of insert your own main character, told by candlelight, and the protagonist could be shaped to look and sound like the young person to whom the story was being told. It was not a matter of sitting in a movie theater and everybody agreeing that Cinderella looks like this. The story could be shaped so that the particular listener could see themselves in that central role. Shakespeare's play, The Winter's Tale, has elements of the old folk tale. The long-lost princess, the curse of eternal winter that could be broken only by true love's first kiss. But The Winter's Tale story is not something that Shakespeare heard from his grandmother. In Shakespeare's time, elements of the old folk tale were being refitted by professional male authors to produce a genre of popular entertainment called the pastoral. Essentially, pastoral was a romance, usually between a prince and shepherdess, and the romance is forbidden until she is suddenly revealed to be a long-lost princess. And everybody loved this sort of story because royalty, the people who made the big decisions, lived lives that were so remote from the peasants that they governed. Kings and queens who had grown up in palaces with servants could not relate to the day-to-day problems of the peasantry. And this only got worse with rising urbanization. Rulers in cities didn't know or care what life was like in the countryside. But in the pastoral storytelling genre, there was this fantasy in which someone who grew up among the farmers and shepherds could bring those countryside concerns to the ear of a king. We could say that this sort of rags to riches story offered a form of gentle critique for the royalty and the nobility who were going to hear it. What would it be like if someone who grew up among the shepherds turned out to be long-lost royalty and then found themselves in a position to influence political decisions? In the play The Winter's Tale, a king becomes obsessed with the suspicion that his wife has been unfaithful. And this soap opera intrigue occupies and corrupts him to the point where he becomes totally politically irresponsible. His actions plunge the whole kingdom into an eternal winter, which will mean starvation for many of the serfs in the surrounding lands. Shakespeare himself lived in what is now known as the Little Ice Age, which was a cold couple of centuries in Northern Europe that was particularly bleak in the late 1500s when Shakespeare was writing. Cool, wet summers drowned the seeds that had been planted in spring, leading to skimpy harvests in autumn. Humidity aided the spread of insects and diseases. It was a disastrous time in England. Shakespeare had already brought up this unusual, unseasonable weather in Midsummer Night's Dream and Macbeth, both of them stories in which royal feuds caused climate crises. In our time, we see a lot of movies where so-and-so has solved the problem of sustainable, renewable energy. In Shakespeare's time, there were a lot of stories about magical solutions to the problem of these waterlogged, buggy, and unproductive summers. In The Winter's Tale, politicians respond to climate change like modern Republicans, by persecuting women and restricting their reproductive freedom. It turns out some things don't change. Shakespeare, in writing this play, adapted a popular novel called Pandosto, which sounds like it's going to be about a flying clown from Neverland, or maybe about a puppet who turns into a real boy. But it wasn't. It's a story about a mad king, a lost princess, and a curse that must be lifted. Shakespeare retitled it A Winter's Tale, which is a good title. He could also have named it Problems with Patriarchy, since the plots of both acts revolve around possessive old men who very nearly succeed in wrecking everything for everyone. The first act centers on King Leontes, who is convinced that his pregnant wife has conceived by having an affair. He speaks of her as his productive property, like some land that he owns, or like a lake on his property. Essentially, a walking incubator in which he can clone himself, and he is infuriated by the thought that this machine might be copying another man. His speeches toward the audience kindle our sympathy for his poor wife if she has run into the arms of another man, which it turns out she did not. The feeling is mixed only with the indignant hope that she is innocent so that she can prove him wrong. But by the time she is proven innocent, she has already been imprisoned and declared dead in her cell, and her baby girl has been banished to die on a mountain on some remote shore. The shore of Bohemia, which is actually a landlocked nation. That was not important to early modern audiences. The second half of the play is threatened by another king, Polixenes, who had been suspected and cleared of the improprieties in the first half, but now he too has become suspicious and possessive. His son, the prince, has been gallivanting around with a shepherd girl, and the king fears that if this young country girl gets knocked up, his kingdom will be handed down to some illegitimate spawn who is not properly inbred. So he goes skulking in disguise to sabotage this illicit dalliance. I won't give away the ending. I'll only say that these two toxic patriarchs have very little to do with a resolution. The world must be saved from climate catastrophe, and these two stodgy old pantaloons are too busy trying to protect their possessions and their reputations to do anything about it, even if it means that every peasant must freeze to death. I'm sure there's some timely political message here, but I don't feel like going into it. The female characters in this play are more impressive, and it's the women who will bring about the resolution. William Shakespeare, at this point in his career, seems to have some regret over Desdemona, the tragic bride in Othello, and Cordelia, the tragic daughter in King Lear. And this story allows him to resurrect these archetypes and give them a more proper send-off. This, I think, is the real heart of the story. While the patriarchs are trashing everything, it's the women who are quietly working to turn this eternal winter into spring. Also, Shakespeare may have felt bad about some of his mid-career matchmaking, marrying some of his brightest heroines to clods and gigolos. So he finally creates a prince who is both charming and intelligent for his fairy tale princess. The novel that Shakespeare adapted was called Pandosto, or A Triumph of Time. And in the play, the spirit of time gets up and addresses the audience halfway through to let them know that the passage of time is going to cause these characters to grow and change. And so we're going to conclude with another brief snippet from Shakespeare's A Winter's Tale, and this is going to be the character of time.
That leaves some wide open, both joy and error, good and bad, that makes an untold heaven. Think upon thee in the name of to use my weight, if you did not cry as a baby for my good hand, that I tried over 16 years, leaving hope untried of that wide gap, says that in my power to overthrow the law. And once in 1 hour, plan to overwhelm custom. This loud, very was at the time, and where's here now? It never, at that time himself doth say, he wishes honestly, you never met. Thank you. They should have given him that role. Next year.
That's right, maybe next year. But we're very excited for Jackson to be doing, he's doing some backstage work, a couple of on-stage cameo appearances. So we're really excited about that. If you have not seen it yet, the Shakespeare's play, The Winter's Tale, is being produced at Delaware Park this summer. I believe it is every night of the week except for Monday. And it's a free performance. So I recommend you come see it if you like Shakespeare and dancing and Jackson. That's right, yes. It is outdoors. If you have not been there before, it is on a hill. You are welcome to bring something to sit on, but there are not chairs there. Do we have any other announcements today?
I just wanted to say that all of our summer services have been completed, and I did want to point out the church picnic, which will be July 28th. If anybody wanted to bring anything, anybody's welcome to come. The last service is always, the picnic will be here in our backyard. If it's raining, it'll be in the basement, but we'll still have hamburgers and hot dogs. And the ice cream social, which will be here, it's the last day of summer, and Nan and Glenn, they will host that. I said somebody will because we have to have our ice cream social. And I know next week Jen is going to be speaking. And then, did you want to say anything about? No, it's a surprise. And then, did you want to say anything about we have the dinner, it's coming up July 10th. If you have not RSVP'd, you need to contact Joan ASAP. It's due tomorrow, and she'll give you details afterwards if you need.
I'm a little nervous because I don't know really what to talk about. It's going to be about my accident, I think, but I will open, I want you guys to talk and ask questions so that I can have something to say. But I think it'll.
We have no other announcements. Please join me for the words of extinguishing the chalice. And here, you're going to use this to put this out. And we got a special helper, my friend Malcolm here. We extinguish this chalice, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. And this concludes our service.